The year is 6 ADD. No one really knows what the extra D stands for. We just kind of need something ever since the robots took over. But it's not. It's not all bad, because you, the robotic protagonist, will be sent back in time and begin your Roboquest to stop the robotic future and pay attention to the story. Because I didn't do that. I honestly don't remember what the story is. I didn't pay that much attention. It's a movement shooter roguelite, or roguelite movement shooter. But no matter which way you look at it, one side is way too ADHD to focus on something, and the other side, well, the other side doesn't get a lot of stories. You know, it doesn't help that the story is easy to follow and simple. Okay, bad start from the top. I'm here, I'm playing it, I'm having fun. I'm having enough fun to want to make a video on it. I've been known to enjoy moving and shooting at people from time to time. Obviously, you do a lot of both in this game. You know, the movement is really responsive. It's almost a little jarring. I was over-adjusting a bunch for the first few runs, and don't get me wrong, I'd much rather have too much control than too little. That feels like shit. Only real awkward valid part is the head bonk. It is exactly what you think it is, but you just don't have that ability to go down initially. So while you're still trying to figure out how many knots per aquatic mile your character's moving at, you're like bumping into shit, bouncing all over the place, you know, you get used to it. But it's a nice kind of realistic attention to detail, because first thing we do when we make robots is, you know, we fuck with them. We're not breaking the mold here. There's a bunch of other movement options you can get later. A jetpack lets you hover, ground slam so you can actually head bonk, and of course, government mandated grappling hook. It's everywhere. You can find them throughout the game and, you know, toggle them on or off, but we'll get back to those later, because as important as movement is in this game, shooting robots in the shoot robot game is just as important. They make that very clear with the amount of fucking guns in the game. They range from familiar classics, you know, old time, you're like, bing, you know, just get the job done, real personable. How was your Christmas, you know, all the way to trying to like fuck a hula hoop. It's just really hard to visualize. Like, it's funny, but how do I aim this? Like, why would I want to do that? There's enough guns where you find a good chunk that you really enjoy, and inversely, you find quite a few that you just don't ever want to fucking use. The game gives you a lot of opportunities to get new guns though, so it's very unlikely you have a gun that either you don't like or doesn't work in your build by the latter half of run, unless you're an insane person, but having the choice is nice. You know, it really lets you handle some of the annoying enemies, like the ones that fly right at you, or sit in the back and beam you to death, or maybe they fly at you and beam you to death. But on the topic of enemies, you know, they're alright. There's enough variety for them to stand out, but nothing too crazy. There's quite a few turret and homing laser missile enemies. They're really annoying, but it's nice having to utilize your movement to kind of break the line to have a priority system. That's cool, but honestly, the bosses are much more interesting. It's one of those few rare FPS games where the boss fights aren't dog shit. They got some pretty unique designs that help them stand out from the regular grunts, but more importantly, they got some pretty sick mechanics. Because most of the time it's got to do with the arena, but at the very least they'll play off of it, alright? One of the bosses is this like Final Fantasy gaze mechanic, where you just dodge it by not looking, and unironically, like, that's awesome. I want more fucked up boss mechanics in FPS games that don't devolve into shoot the weak point or like kill the ads, you know? But as great as these mechanics are, they show a few problems. You remember those gadgets earlier that we were talking about? You know, they're good upgrades, they're really fun, but they fucking dog walk most of the fights. With a handful of the gadgets, you can easily avoid or ignore a good chunk of a fight. Like, look at Beetle Royale. Sick design. Who doesn't love Beetles? I want to hold this guy like a burger and eat him. But the whole thing is they got limited platforms, kind of like, you know, another little Royale I know. It's Fall Guys. It's just like that. But then if you have some of the gadgets like the jetpack or grappling hook, then you're just shooting at a cool looking bug and ignoring the whole gimmick. And, you know, we've seen it with that game. That is a good strategy. That is a really good strategy. Some might call it cheating, but it feels like the fights were definitely not designed with the gadgets in mind for the most part. And that's where the tricky part is, because you can toggle the gadgets. So do you have them on and trivialize some aspects of the game, or do you have them off and just struggle in the later difficulties when the enemies are super aggressive? I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend I know. Honestly, I think this might be the best case scenario given the context. I'm just thankful that the bosses weren't designed around having the gadgets, because that would suck ass. The way things currently stand, you're rewarded for finding these gadgets. And yeah, sure, the reward might be really, really big. It's really big. But at least we aren't being directly punished for not having them. That would be really bad for a roguelite. And on the topic of roguelites, I feel like with a lot of other games in this little subgenre, they forget they're making a roguelite. It's like, oh, we've made this like really sick movement shooter, feels really good, but I think we're making a roguelite, so let's just throw in a bunch of like basic upgrades and elements from whatever the most popular roguelite is at the moment. It's like Hades. It's usually Hades. But Roboquest, remember, there's real replayability and depth. There's a good chunk of characters, all with different kits. Sure, they all look very, very similar for the most part, but they're robots, so maybe that gets a pass. There's enough meaningful upgrades on each character to where you can decide on a playstyle without it becoming stale. You know, have one gun that does everything, or no gun because you don't want that shit in your life. There's also quite a few upgrades that are just stat sticks, but you know, a good chunk of the items are like that too, but there are a few interesting ones, right? Like TV remote. It's got 25% cooldown reduction on your primary ability. I mean, that's usually the engine that gets the whole build going. 25% is a shit ton. And only an 8% chance to get absolutely hogwashed. I mean, 8% isn't even that bad. That's like 9 lifetime car crashes, right? But sometimes you get in that crash. Sometimes you pretzel yourself across like a tree, and you really feel it, because things can get sour in this game really fast. So being on top of your movement is really important, but overall I found the game balance quite nice for the most part, you know, barring the previous gadget disparity discussion or whatever. You never feel too strong since items don't stack, and some of the larger upgrades are from level ups which are gated by the amount of enemies on the level. But at the same time, you don't feel too weak either, because the game does a good job of drip feeding you upgrades and opportunities to stabilize if you're behind. And if you're like me, you know, some roguelite old Scrooge, you know, grouch motherfucker, then, you know, sadly I gotta say, this game, it's got meta progression. Just like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, the upgrades aren't anything too egregious. It's not like a free revive or an extra dash. Honestly, at worst, you're missing out on like a free level up when you start the run. At worst, you don't have the gadgets and crystals when you find them throughout the game, but they're not mandatory. You don't feel that incomplete without them. But when you start getting those higher difficulties and you really need that 5 HP per level, you'll have them. They're really easy to unlock. Some of these games, it takes like 50 hours of farming to get enough currency to fill out the fucking family PoE skill tree. But in Roboquest, they give you so much of the currency, it's like, it's nothing. There's these data logs that are hidden around the map that might contain story in them. I'm not sure. But the point is, you pick them up, you get 3 wrenches, and these things are fucking everywhere. So you go run around, you're exploring, you start finding NPCs, gadgets, and you know, the aforementioned data logs. It's just competent. Probably the best compliment I can give this game is that the hardest part about making this video is I can't stop playing. I have like 10 hours of B-roll for this fucking 10-minute video. There's just a lot to do in this game. They have an endless mode where you fight rooms of enemies and get really silly runs. There's a multiplayer mode. You can play with your friend. It's friend, not friends. They couldn't figure that out, I guess. But, you know, that could be fun. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, though, because, you know, well... Yeah, so, like, your primary is that character. That's, like, the force field. But your secondary is the little like, melee bash. It's just called that because, like, not every character has a secondary. You know what I'm saying? Are you using the starting gun?
Yeah. Kinda wanna play Fortnite right now, though.
Wanna play right now?
Yeah, right now. Godzilla's gonna go soon, and we don't ever get at ever again.
You want to stop playing for God? Dude, Godzilla got his ass beat by a robot. So, okay, listen. I need you to okay, first things first. Find a different fucking gun. I need you to lock in, and we're playing Roboquest. Okay, let's go.
You want to use Robo Nuggets or Robo Wings?
What does that mean?
I'm giving you titles.
I'm not gonna name this. I'm not gonna name the video Robo Nugget or Robo Wings, dude.
Robo Job.
Okay, that's a pretty good one.
Robo Hustle.
It's like
Robo Manager. I don't know.